All right, we're going to look closer at a very complex issue that has major implications, as you just heard, for not only the United States, for Europe, and of course the Middle East. Until last year, Norman Roule served as National Intelligence Manager for Iran at the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Before that, he spent over 30 years at the CIA managing programs on Iran. He is now Senior Advisor to United Against a Nuclear Iran. Norman joining us from our studios in Washington. Great to have you back on the show. I want to start with just the last few minutes. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani is, as we speak, addressing the nation. And amongst the comments he's making there, saying that no negotiation can happen when U.S. sanctions are on Iran. And in the same day today, we heard from a senior administration officials that sanctions are working. They say their pressure campaign is working and seem to believe it's going to push Iran to the table. So who do you think is to be believed?
Well, the pressure campaign from the United States is certainly working. Iran's economy has begun to erode. It's been eroding for some time because of its own mismanagement and corruption problems, the IRGC domination of the government. At the same time, the Iranians have little drivers to bring them to the table. Right now in Iran, the supreme leader, the other hardliners have very little trust in the United States. They have generally opposed any communications with the United States since the inception of the regime. It's unlikely that there are any significant reasons that Iran would come to the table right now. The administration's view is once sanctions come into place, once they begin to erode economic stability to the point where it impacts political stability, then the Iranians will come to the table. That may entirely happen. It was a primary driver for the JCPOA nuclear deal, but it took several years, and I think it may well take a different supreme leader in this case.
Norman, it may take several years. In the meantime, things are not going to remain static. What are the dangers that Iran, or certainly the military or the Revolutionary Guards, would be moved to take some kind of provocative action? We've seen maybe even signs of it in the Persian Gulf and the Red Sea recently.
Well, that's certainly correct. And you're watching right now within the Persian Gulf an Iranian naval maneuver. Such maneuvers are not unusual. They normally take place later in the year. The timing of this particular maneuver is almost certainly related to the announcement of sanctions. And here the Iranians are playing with fire. To tie this to North Korea for a moment, the North Korean peninsula really has very little strategic geographic influence. But the Strait of Hormuz sees approximately 36% of all oil aboard ship floating every day, as well as 20% of all oil in the world. This touches massive international and global economies. This said, if you're the Iranians, the best way to impede traffic in the Strait of Hormuz is not with small boats, but it's with mines or its vast array of missiles. In the near term, I would expect Iran to posture aggression in this fashion, but not undertake any military activities, because this would cause them problems with Europe, Russia, and of course China. I do anticipate Iran undertaking a more aggressive posture in cyber activities against the Sunni nations, Israel, the United States, and those countries which support sanctions.
So we're seeing from your description, Iran going in a direction which may be the exact opposite of what the Trump administration is going for, at least in the near future. We've heard President Trump offer to meet the Iranian leadership without preconditions. We heard that offer reiterated today by administration official. I'm curious, you have dealt with Iran from intelligence agencies for over 30 years. How shocked were you or not to hear that offer, and do you think it's a good idea?
Well, it's always a good idea to talk with your adversary. Multiple administrations have made the position that they would speak to Iran when Iran is ready to come to the table and speak seriously. The Obama administration tested that theory on the nuclear issue, and after 2 years of very difficult negotiations, produced the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA deal. What the Trump administration is saying is, in its essence, nothing new. Now, the issue is, when do we expect Iran to come to the table? Somehow people are interpreting the president's willingness to speak with Iran as an anticipation that Iran will come to the table tomorrow. I've not heard anyone in Washington say this, and I don't think it's reasonable to expect this.